Hello everyone, welcome to Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services, a premier institution for preparing for civil services in India. Today, I'm here to cover the most important current affairs from the past 3 weeks, and these current affairs are going to be important for all the government exams in India, and especially the UPSC, which is UPSC prelims, mains, and interview process. And these current affairs are going to cover all the current affairs from the past 3 weeks, and in this current affairs I will be covering not only the current affairs but all the conventional GS syllabus related to the UPSC, and other static facts will be covered here, so that the static GA portions is also covered, and the UPSC syllabus related to the current affairs is also covered in the syllabus. So for this reason, this current affairs analysis or daily news and editorial analysis is going to be important for all of you. So having said that, let us begin the analysis for today. The first news of analysis for today is about the Article 244A of the Constitution of India. And this topic was in news because recently the Karbi Anglong region in Assam basically demanded for the state within the state, that is the autonomous state under Article 244A of the Constitution of India. And for this reason, this topic is important. And this topic is important for the GS paper 2 in UPSC. And under GS paper 2, this topic caters to the syllabus federalism and issues related to SC and STs in India. And in this topic, we'll discuss the context of the news and the history of the demand. Then we'll discuss the 244 and 244A of the Constitution of India. Then we'll discuss the 6 scheduled areas. What are the 6 scheduled areas and its provisions? And then we'll discuss the demands for autonomy in different regions in India. For instance, Gorkhaland demand, the Vidarbha demand, Purvanchal demand in India, etc. Then we'll discuss the PYQ or the previous year's question, which was asked from the similar topic in UPSC. So the context of the news, as we just discussed, in Assam's tribal-dominated Dipu Lok Sabha constituency, all the political parties have basically pledged to implement the Article 244 subclause A of the Constitution, aiming to establish the autonomous state within the state. Okay, so you have to remember this point. Okay, so Difu Lok Sabha constituency is basically located in Karbi Anglong area. So Karbi Anglong is basically a area in Assam. Okay, and this is basically a autonomous district within the Assam. Okay, so for this reason you have to remember this point. And so far as history of the demand is concerned, the demand for autonomy in the region dates back to 1950s. So during the 1950s, the demand for the separate hill state was made, but despite the creation of Meghalaya in 1972, so Meghalaya was created in 1972, the leaders in the Karbi Anglong region basically did not opted for the demand for the hill state, because they were hoping that they will be granted the autonomy under Article 244A. Okay, so basically they were demanding for the autonomy within the 244A. So for this reason, they did not demand for the separate statehood when the Meghalaya was given the separate statehood under the Article 3 of the Constitution of India. So Meghalaya was basically an first autonomous state. Okay, so it was a first autonomous state. So before Meghalaya became a full-fledged state in 1972, it was an autonomous state. So for this reason, similar type of autonomous state was being demanded by the people in Karbi Anglong region in Assam. And the Article 244 basically is contained in the part 10 of the Constitution of India, and it emphasizes the special system of administration for certain areas designated as scheduled areas and tribal areas. Okay, so India mein basically there are two type of tribal regions. Okay, so Article 244 basically governs two type of areas. The first one is the scheduled areas, and second one is the tribal areas. Okay, so tribal areas are basically contained in northeastern region. Basically 4 states are there. Okay, we'll discuss about these 4 states as well. And the scheduled areas are basically located in central eastern region. For example, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Andhra Pradesh, etc. So there are except the northeastern states, in these states there are the scheduled areas. ठीक है, so tribal areas are basically for the northeastern states, so you have to remember this. And recently Ladakh region is also demanding for the inclusion in 6th schedule of the Constitution of India. So basically the scheduled areas is contained in the 5th schedule. So 5th schedule is basically the scheduled areas, and the tribal areas are basically governed by the 6th schedule. So these regions are called the 6th scheduled areas. So people of Ladakh have been demanding for the inclusion of the Ladakh region in the 6th scheduled areas. So if the Ladakh becomes the 6th scheduled area, then Ladakh will be the first state apart from the northeastern region to be granted the 6th scheduled status. ठीक है, so you have to remember this point. So Article 244 relates to the scheduled and tribal areas, and the Article 244A was added by the 22nd Amendment Act of 1969. ठीक है, so you have to remember the amendments as well, and it allows the parliament to enact or establish the autonomous state within the state of Assam. ठीक है, and comprising all or some of the tribal areas specified in the 6th schedule. So the areas which are located in Assam and which are the 6th schedule areas can be given the status of autonomous state under this article. ठीक है, so these are all important facts, so you have to remember these points. Schedule areas, they are called 5th schedule areas, and there are tribal areas, they are called 6th scheduled areas. ठीक है, and the northeastern states are basically categorized. A few of the northeastern states are basically categorized in the 6th schedule areas, and other areas in India except the 4 northeastern states have been included in the 5th schedule region. ठीक है, so these are all important facts, and 6th schedule areas of the Indian Constitution are basically contained in 4 northeastern states, which are Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. So this is a very very important point. UPSC में 6th schedule related questions बहुत बार पूछा गया है. ठीक है, so you have to remember this point, and this is a hot topic as well because the Ladakh is demanding for inclusion of the Ladakh region in the 6th scheduled areas. So for this reason, this topic is important, and there are 10 autonomous district councils which are formed under the 6th scheduled area. So as of today there are 10 autonomous district councils, and they are contained in Assam, Meghalaya, Mizoram and Tripura. And in Assam there are 3 autonomous districts councils. The first one is Bodland, the second one is Karbi Anglong. So this is the topic of analysis for today. So Karbi Anglong is basically located in the southeastern part of Assam, and there is Kachar Hill. So these are 3 autonomous districts in the Assam, and there are Garo, Khasi, Jaintia. They are located in Meghalaya. So Meghalaya is basically region or plateau region which was part of the Chota Nagpur plateau, and the Meghalaya is basically separated by Chota Nagpur plateau by the Malda fault. ठीक है, so Malda fault, you have to remember this, the Malda fault. So ये क्वेश्चन बेसिक जीके फैक्ट्स है, आपको ये सब याद रखना है. So Garo, Khasi, Jaintia hills are basically located in the Meghalaya, and these 3 hills forms the state of Meghalaya, and these 3 states are basically resided by the Garo, Khasi and Jaintia tribes. So Meghalaya is the only state which is covered entirely by the 6th scheduled areas. So Meghalaya is entire 6th scheduled areas, entirely 6th scheduled areas. ठीक है, so you have to remember this point. And so far as Mizoram is concerned, Mizoram में 3 autonomous district councils है. The first one is Chakma district, second one is Mara district, third one is Lai district. So Chakma, Mara and Lai districts, so these are the 3 autonomous districts councils in Mizoram. And Tripura में एक ही autonomous district council है, that is the Tripura Tribal Autonomous District Council. ठीक है, so this is it. So these are all important facts, so you have to remember these points. These are very very important for the UPSC and the state PCS exam. And so far as the provisions of the autonomous districts are concerned, the autonomous districts are basically contained in the Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura and Mizoram. We discussed about it. So basically the autonomous regions or the 6 scheduled areas are basically divided into autonomous districts, and these autonomous districts are governed by the autonomous district councils. So autonomous district councils basically govern the autonomous districts, and governor has the special power to reorganize the districts. So autonomous districts are basically reorganized by governors, and governor can adjust their boundaries, names, even dividing them into multiple autonomous regions. Okay, so governor has a special power in autonomous districts or the six scheduled areas. And this is a very important point. The acts of parliament or state legislature might not apply directly to these districts unless adapted with the specific modifications. So directly the act of parliament or the state legislature cannot be applied in these regions. So only after the modification of the acts of parliament or state legislature, these laws can be applied in the autonomous districts. So this is a very important point. And autonomous district councils basically consist of 30 members, and four are nominated and 26 are elected through the adult franchise. So this is a very important point. So you have to remember the compositions as well. So this type of question is asked in the UPSC statement based questions. And comment in the comment section which article of the constitution provides for the universal adult franchise in India. So this is an important point. And tenure of the autonomous district council is of 5 years. Okay? And they can make laws for certain matters such as land, forest, canal water, shifting cultivation, village administration, inheritance of property, marriage, divorce, social customs, etc. So all these matters are the matters in the jurisdiction of the autonomous district councils, but all such laws require the assent of the governor. So when laws in these matters are made by the autonomous district councils, the law has to be approved by the governor. Okay, so you have to remember this point. And they can constitute village councils as well. So village council or the courts of trial for the trial of the suits and cases between tribes. So if there happens the dispute between the tribes, so these disputes can be resolved by the village councils, which are constituted by these autonomous district councils. Okay, so these are all important provisions related to autonomous district councils and the autonomous districts. If you have any doubts, you can raise your doubts in the comment section. And so far as the other demands for autonomy in India are concerned, there are many demands in different parts of India for the autonomy. For instance, the most important is the Gorkhaland movement. So Gorkhaland movement is basically demand for the separate statehood for the Gorkha people, which is located in the North Bengal region, which are Darjeeling, Kalimpong, Siliguri, Kurseong, etc. Okay, so basically people of Gorkhaland region are demanding for the Gorkhaland statehood because of the identity crisis that they face. And apart from the identity crisis of the Gorkha people, there are also lack of development in these regions. So for this reason, people of these regions are demanding for the separate state of Gorkhaland. And there is demand for the Bodoland, which is located in Assam. Okay, so Bodoland is 6th scheduled area. We discussed about it as well. And there is Vidarbha, which is located in Maharashtra. And there is demand for Bundelkhand, which is located here between the Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh. And there is demand for the Ladakh, separate statehood in Ladakh as well. And there is Harit Pradesh, which is located in the western UP. And there is demand for the Purvanchal, which is in the eastern UP. And there is demand for the Mithilanchal, which is located in the eastern Bihar. Bagelkhand, which is located in northeast of Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so Bagelkhand is another demand. There is demand for Kosal, Tulu Nadu, Kodagu, Rayalaseema, Saurashtra, etc. So there are many demands in India for the separate statehood, but these demands are intermittent and they are often overlooked by the government. So these are all important demands of the statehood in India. And in UPSC 2016 in mains, a question was asked related to the scheduled tribes in India. The question was, why are tribals in India referred as scheduled tribes, and indicate the major provisions inside in the Constitution of India for their upliftment. So basically in this question, first you have to define the scheduled tribes. So you can mention about the Article 342 of the Constitution of India, which basically empowers the President of India to designate certain communities as the scheduled tribes. And you can mention about the Article 366, which basically defines the scheduled tribes in India. Okay? And then you can write about the Government of India Act of 1935, which basically contains the term the scheduled tribe. Okay? So in these all articles and the Government of India Act of 1935, through which the Indian Constitution was borrowed mostly, contains the term scheduled tribes. For this reason, India uses the term scheduled tribes. ठीक है, and indicate the major provisions enshrined in the Constitution of India for their upliftment. So for this question, you can write various articles. For instance, Article 15.4, Article 16 can be written, Article 36, 46, which provides for the economic and socio-economic upliftment of the scheduled tribes in India. Then you can write about Article 330 and 332, which provides for the reservation of the scheduled tribes in the parliament and the state legislature. ठीक है, so all these articles can be mentioned in this article. And you can also write about the Article 338A, and this article basically provides for the National Commission for the Scheduled Tribe. So various provisions have been provided for the upliftment of the scheduled tribes in India. So you can write all these, and in the conclusion you can write or quote terms like sabka saath, sabka vikas, etc. So this is how you approach this question, and you can try answering this question at home. Now moving on to next topic of discussion for today. The next topic of discussion for today is inheritance tax, and this topic has been in news because recently a debate has been going on regarding the inheritance tax between the ruling party and the opposition party. And this topic becomes important for the GS paper 3, which is taxation and inequality of wealth in India. And in this topic we are going to discuss about the details of the news. We'll discuss the need for the inheritance tax in India. We'll discuss what is the inheritance tax, and then we'll discuss the concerns related to the inheritance tax. So recently during the Lok Sabha elections campaigning, the issue of introduction of inheritance tax in India has led to eruption of the major political row. ठीक है, so opposition parties and the ruling parties have been throwing words against each other regarding the inheritance tax, and the inheritance tax is pursued by many as the taxation tool for the equitable wealth distribution. So inheritance tax is important because it ensures the equitable distribution of, because the inheritance tax is the tax which is imposed on those who inherit the assets from the deceased person. ठीक है, so inheritance tax is basically imposed on the people who inherit the assets from the deceased person. So this is a form of that tax, and by imposing the inheritance tax, basically we are imposing taxes on the rich people and the inherited person. So for this reason, that tax can be distributed amongst the people to reduce the inequality. So for this reason, this inheritance tax is important, but there remains a concern about this tax because it is being seen as a symbolic tool, and this is being marketed as the Robin Hood tax. So Robin Hood tax is another term for this inheritance tax, because Robin Hood is basically a fictional character in the English cinemas, where the Robin Hood as a person comes in the cinemas, and he steals money from the rich people and distributes the money among the poor people. So for this reason, the Robin Hood tax is alternative name of the inheritance tax. And so far as India's histories of inheritance tax is concerned, India used to impose another form of inheritance tax, which is that tax which is popularly known as the state duty. So India used to impose the state duty, and the state duty was imposed in India in 1953, but the state duty was abolished by the Rajiv Gandhi government in 1985. So this state duty was basically imposed on the immovable properties in India, and all movable property passed on to successors from the death of the individual. So it was imposed on both the immovable and movable properties in India. So therefore, so far as the status of inheritance tax in India is concerned, the inheritance tax is not imposed in the present day in India. So why has there been growing demands for the implementation of inheritance tax in India? The reasons are many, and the first reason is rising wealth and income inequality in India. So according to the Credit Suisse, which releases the global wealth report, so this report is important. So as per this report, the richest 1% own the 51.5%, and the richest 10% account for the 77.4% of the nation's wealth. So for this reason, the bottom 60% of the population own only meager 4.7% of nation's wealth. So this is a very large number of inequality which exists in India, and you can quote these facts in UPSC mains answer writing to support your points. Okay, so make note of these quotes. And lack of inclusive growth. So Gini wealth coefficient. So Gini coefficient is basically a diagram or graph to show the income inequality. So Gini wealth coefficient in India has grown up 81 from 81.3% to 85.4%. So Gini coefficient is about to reach 100%. So when it reaches the 100%, there will be maximal inequality. So Gini wealth coefficient in India shows that India is a country with the high level of inequality. So this is an important fact. And endowments to social sector institutions. So if the wealth tax or the inheritance tax is imposed, the Indian hospitals, universities, and other institutions can be financed. Okay, so fundings can be given in these social sectors. So for this reason, there is need for implementation of inheritance tax in India and need for more direct taxes. So government's fiscal deficit is very high after the COVID-19 pandemic, especially. So for this reason, there is need for the direct taxes, and this inheritance tax is one of the form of the direct tax. So if we increase the inheritance tax in India, or if we implement the inheritance tax in India, there will be increase in the revenue of the government and there will be decrease in the fiscal deficit. Okay. And international practices, many developed countries such as England, France, Germany, USA, and other countries in Southeast Asia such as Philippines, Taiwan, Thailand, etc., charge the inheritance tax. So inheritance tax is there in everywhere around the world. For instance, the France has the highest inheritance tax involved. 60% of the inherited property has been taxed in France. And Japan, there is 55%, and in Germany the inheritance tax is 50%. South Korea, there is 50% again, and in United Kingdom there is 40%. So these are all countries which imposes the inheritance taxes. So for this reason, India also needs the inheritance tax law in India. So far as the challenges of the implementation of inheritance tax in India is concerned, the first important challenge is the difficulty in valuation of property. So the valuation of property in India is very difficult, which will incur a huge amount of cost to the government, and there will be also a need of expertise in India. So for this reason, the inheritance tax implementation in India is very difficult, and risk of closure of business. So if government increases or imposes the inheritance tax, this will create the pressure on the less profitable businesses, small businesses. Okay. So for this reason, these businesses will flee away from India. They will not be able to pay taxes because the burden of tax increase. So this increase in burden of tax on these businesses would lead to closure of these businesses and the flight of capitals and entrepreneurs. So as the tax increases, the capitals and the entrepreneurs will fly away from India, because the investors and the capitalists are always looking for the countries which have the low tax regime. So the foreign direct investments and the foreign portfolio investments in India would reduce, and dampening the capital asset creation and high inflation. Okay. So capital asset creation would reduce and the inflation would also grow, because the people will start consuming more, and there will be increase of consumerism, because if people save, they know that the government will tax them. So for this reason, they will consume more, and that consumption leads to high inflation. Okay. So that will hamper the economic development of India. And secondary tax leading to double taxation. So taxation is being already imposed to our parents, but after dying of the parents as well, if we inherit the property, that property will be taxed. That means there will be double taxation. So double taxation issue is also there. So for this reason, there is huge challenge of implementation of inheritance tax in India. So these were all important facts about the implementation challenges of inheritance tax in India. The next topic of discussion for today is inflammatory bowel disease. And this topic is important because there has been rise of the ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease in India, and these two are basically types of the inflammatory bowel disease. So IBD is basically umbrella term for the chronic inflammatory conditions which affects the GI tract. So the gastrointestine is basically affected by this IBD, and there are two main forms of IBD: the Crohn's disease, which can affect any part of the digestive tract from mouth to anus. So any part of the digestive system can be affected by the Crohn's disease, and the inflammation can be patchy. So sometimes inflammation might happen and sometimes there might not be any inflammation. So Crohn's disease is an disease which is the IBD, and second one is the ulcerative colitis. So ulcerative colitis is limited to the inner lining of mucosa. So the main difference between two is Crohn's disease affect all parts of digestive tract, but ulcerative colitis affect the only the inner lining, which is the mucosa of the large intestine, which is the colon and the rectum. So only the mucosa is affected by this ulcerative colitis, and the inflammation is continuous. So in the Crohn's disease, the inflammation is patchy, but in the case of the ulcerative colitis, so there will be continuous inflammation in the gastrointestine. So these are all important facts about the inflammatory bowel disease, and you have to know main important difference between the IBD and the IBS. So people often get confused with the IBD and the irritable bowel syndrome. The IBD is basically chronic inflammatory disease, okay, and this is a disease of digestive tract, and it is influenced by the genetic, immune and environmental factors, whereas the irritable bowel syndrome is a non-inflammatory functional bowel disorder, and it is possibly linked to altered gut brain interaction, heightened gut nerve sensitivity, or digestive muscle contraction issues. So basically the main difference is the IBD is inflammatory disease, but in case of IBS there is no inflammation. And IBD might be caused by genetic factors as well, immune factors as well, and the environmental factors, but the bowel syndrome is basically caused by the gut brain interactions. For instance, if there is issue of the gut bacteria, or if there is issue of mental health in the body, then that will cause the IBS. So mental disorder is one of the cause of the IBS. Okay, so if the mental stability is not there, the IBS will be caused, but the IBD is not caused by the mental disorders or any kind of digestive muscle contraction issues. So this is the main difference between the IBD and IBS. So far as the causes of IBD is concerned, there are mainly three causes: genetics, immune system, and the environmental factors. So we discussed about it. And the symptoms of the IBD includes the abdominal pain, cramping, diarrhea, weight loss, fatigue, etc. And most importantly, there is no cure for IBD, so we can only manage the IBD. And so far as the challenge for India is concerned, the incidence of IBD in India has doubled since 1990. So this is a very huge increase in number of IBD cases in India. And diagnosing the IBD is also difficult because we cannot distinguish between the intestinal TB and the symptoms of Crohn's disease. And this similarity makes diagnosing IBD difficult. And the lifestyle changes, including the shift towards the westernized diet, is also a concern. So food habits is also affecting the incidence of IBD in India. So these are all important challenges, and these are all important facts about the IBD in India. And UPSC in 2021 asked a question related to the hereditary diseases. So this is a question, and these are the statements, and this question is pretty straightforward. And comment the answer of this question in the comment section, and from this question you can guess that this type of question is asked in UPSC. So with this question, the last topic of discussion for today ends for you. The tip of the day is self-explanatory, and the picture you can see here, the picture basically talks about the volume of the problem. When you start preparing for the civil services, problems look very big. For instance, the big syllabus, the large number of test series, many books to read, etc. makes the problem very big. But as you start working hard with discipline, the volume of the problems starts diminishing. So as the volume of the problem starts diminishing, the syllabus looks smaller and your preparation gets better. So do not get dejected and frustrated in the initial days of your preparations. Keep working hard and stay consistent. So having said that, if you like this video, hit the like button and share this video as much as you can. So having said that, I'm concluding today's session. We'll meet again in the next video. Till then, take care.